Mr. Pat McGee. He is the documentarian who just did Bernie Blackout. It just premiered last Wednesday on Vice. If you haven't had a chance to see it, the way I viewed it was I went to their vicetv.com, and then you just click your provider and you have access to it. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Pat. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's been kind of a whirlwind, and it's exciting to get the film out there and to hear people's reaction. Like yourself, and so many people have reached out, and we just want to add to the conversation, and I think that's what the film's doing.
Absolutely. So, starting out, what made you decide to want to do a documentary about Bernie's Blackout?
I'm a supporter of Bernie Sanders and a lot of his policies since 2015. And, this time around, I couldn't have been more excited when he announced. And I just wrapped up another project, and I just wanted to be involved. And I wanted to go on the campaign trail. As a storyteller, as a filmmaker, I knew that this campaign was of historical, significance. I mean, it was important, and more than anyone in any campaign in my lifetime. And I thought, just from a storyteller, you're looking at David versus Goliath, and I always loved the story of an underdog. And even though Bernie Sanders at the time, when I was thinking about doing this in the fall, he was raising, lots of money, and there was this, big groundswell of support. I had heard about the Bernie Blackout clearly, just like anyone else, because I was a frustrated supporter. I saw him not getting the coverage that the other candidates were getting. And if he was getting coverage, it was a little skewed. So around December of 2019, I really wanted to kind of launch into that kind of premise. It's, he's not getting the coverage. But then, after he came back from his heart attack, he started to rise in the polls, and people started talking about him all the time. That premise of him not being ignored was kind of going away. So in January, I thought to myself, well, I don't know if that still exists to that level, but what I knew is that it was changing. The conversation was changing, but I wanted to be on the ground, and I wanted to really capture the spirit of the campaign, the spirit of the supporters, to basically really kind of document a moment in history. And once we got out there, we realized that it wasn't them being ignored. It wasn't us being ignored. It wasn't Bernie being ignored. It had morphed into something much uglier and much more sinister, if you will. And it's disgusting on so many levels. And so, as we really went into it, we really want to document history about this great movement of people that are trying to transform our country into good things, into better things. And what we started to witness was just this vile and disgust of cable punditry at its worst.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point. In, 2015, in 2016, a lot of people didn't know who Byrne was. So there was that, maybe they just don't know about him, and that's why they're not covering him. You know damn well who he is now. That's not why it's a blackout. So,
right.
Yeah, that's a really good point. What do you think, the biggest differences are between, the media this time and last time?
I mean, it's a good question. I think it really is. There was this kind of idea that we all know that they just wanted to ignore him. They didn't take him seriously. He was too old, He was too far to the left. He was too radical, yada, yada, yada. I mean, it was just always like, he's on the fringes. Nobody's going to vote for him. He's crazy. And what was really disheartening is, in 2016, when you saw those massive rallies that so many of us attended, and it not go reported in cable news, I mean, they literally, we're talking about a mass movement. It's electrifying. I get fired up just thinking about it. And just for them to ignore it, I mean, that really is a blackout. And there's been so many good reporters that have covered this, you know. But this time around, I think it was personal, and I think it was in my opinion, a consolidated effort by not just mainstream corporate media, especially cable news and punditry, but then also just to see the DNC, in my opinion, pushing this electability argument that was complete BS. I mean, you know, you can stop me if I go on too much, but I mean, just the whole electability argument makes no sense to me. I mean, we heard it from mainstream corporate media, we heard it from the DNC, and at the time when they were pushing this false narrative, all they kept saying was he's not electable, he's not electable. But then you look at the polls, and all the polls, it wasn't just Bernie that was beating Trump. In fair play to the other candidates, they were all within the margin of error to some extent. Elizabeth Warren was beating Trump. They all were. But for some reason, they said, Biden is more electable. And while that was going on, which was complete BS, is Bernie had more contributions, as we know. I'm preaching to the choir. More contributions. He had more enthusiastic supporters. He had people knocking on doors in the dead of winter. I mean, he was organized, just, it blows my mind. And so then they talked about electability issues. And the thing is, when you talk about electability issues, let's talk about people's record and how they change and evolve. That's all open for discussion when you look at the general election. That is going to be just ripped apart, dissected, and whether we like it or not, Vice President Joe Biden is going to have a lot of these issues examined thoroughly, and basically thrown at you with $2 billion or $3 billion of money, a massive war chest. So, I mean, I think Bernie Sanders was the most electable candidate, and I think between the two of them, the DNC, in my opinion, to some extent, and the corporate media, they did a con job on the voters.
Absolutely. And do you kind of, even if it's unintentional, do you kind of blame viewers for not digging deeper, for just taking things as gospel and saying, ooh, Bernie makes my skin crawl. Oh my God, they've got to have a valid reason for saying that. He's so weird,
Right.
You kind of blame the viewers and say, when the hell do they just think for themselves?
I mean, it's a really good question, and I don't know how to answer that other than I think there is this de facto trust element that goes into anyone on television. So if you look at the people that are making these bullshit comments, excuse my language, they are trusted in their audience. So, if you're going to go listen to The View, you're going to trust the people on The View, and that's, you're just basically, so I think that there's this de facto trust element that goes into anyone on television. And then you take it a step further. When you look at cable news, when I was growing up, you had the evening news. I didn't know if they were Republicans or Democrat. We didn't know. They reported the news. And now you have Fox and you have MSNBC, you have the left and right. And basically all the people on there are representing news, but it's really politics, cable talk show, and what we're going to do is I'm the producer. I have an opinion. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a couple pieces of the puzzle. I'm going to drop them into my little equation here and, prop you guys up in your little seats. And I'm just going to use you as a soundboard to get my ideas across, my agenda, etc. We all know this is going on. The people that are, involved in this business, we know that that's not news. That is political talk show driven by agenda. And I really hope that our film adds a bit to the death of cable news. I mean, I hope to God that people watch this and say, look, you know what? this isn't news. This is a talk show with an agenda. It's politically skewed, and if we can bring some awareness to that, then we've done a good job. And it's not cable news. I mean, it's it's not news. It's political punditry spew.
Absolutely. I think, and your film got that across. Absolutely. And I think one of the things that, in all fairness, I kind of forgot about was you showed the many screens of, the robots just saying the same thing at the same time. And it just gave me goosebumps because I'm like, holy shit, like these people literally are doppelgangers. Like they have no mind of their own. They are literally regurgitating a script, and their people follow them as news. What has people been? What have their reactions been to scenes like that? Are people aware it goes that deep?
I think that there's a lot of people. It was something actually that I had forgotten about, and I know Matt and Terry, a couple of the great producers on our team. When we were writing up the outline, that fact had actually slipped my mind, and when they brought that up, I was like, oh my God, you're right. I remember that. It's a perfect example of how much power and influence the owners and the people that are running these broadcast networks have, and it's disgusting to see. And I think hopefully when people see that, it's a really good example of this isn't someone just kind of given their their unfiltered idea, speaking from the top of their head. Your trusted news anchor in Des Moines, Iowa, or Omaha, Nebraska. These people are to some extent bought and paid for. They had a script, they read the script, and unless someone was smart enough to call that out, everybody lives in a vacuum. The people that they're going to their trusted news stores, their evening news, and they can't believe that they're just being lied to or being conned.
Absolutely. And we've seen what happens to people who speak their truth, like Phil Donahue, and I can't think of the gentleman's name. He recently passed away. He wanted to cover Bernie, and he was immediately fired. And so we see that happen to anyone who tries to take on that machine, which is why I'm so thankful to be part of independent media, just because I have no boss, so to speak. I just say whatever the fuck I want, and it's wonderful. And that brings me back to, this is why I started the show 3 years ago, because I saw this shit going on, and we started that hashtag, We Are the Media. How do you think, the internet itself played into helping our campaign? Because the news was so skewed.
It's really interesting. I think that I just saw one of these comments. Sorry, it says, we make the choice to be lied to when we tune in to mainstream media. Sorry, I just saw this.
Oh, it's okay.
No, I mean, that's a really good point. Not Real says, we make the choice to be lied to when we tune into mainstream media. And I think that's, couldn't be more accurate. And I think that there's a learning curve to some extent, where I think the older generation is comfortable with cable news media. They've been with it for 20 years. And now you see that newer generation, a younger generation that doesn't trust it and are seeking out alternative news sources. And so I think that you're going to see, hopefully, the death of cable news, and people evolve away, move away from there. But going back to your question, it was, how does the internet, or how does the web, what was it? I'm sorry.
The internet seems to be like our hero with all of the MSM. How do you think that the internet kind of saved us in a lot of ways, to kind of counteract what we were up against?
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, it's a powerful tool, and one of Senator Sanders' strength was being able to mobilize and be effective online and to raise money, to organize, to get people out to the events. What's interesting is if you look on the flip side of it, mainstream media or corporate media or the people that were against the Senator Sanders campaign, they use that to their advantage to some extent by throwing out this Bernie bro myth. And, so while in a lot of ways it really helped Senator Sanders, not being able to come out forcefully and reject that narrative, I think really hurt the campaign. I had a lot of, really, good friends that are smart, intelligent people that were full on, they believe the Bernie bro myth. And one of my things in the film, thanks to some really talented producers on our team like Terry and Egan and Adam and Matt and the whole team, Jeff Winchill's study debunks this. And when I first saw the study, I love how it goes in, he analyzed 100 million tweets. Who analyzes 100 million tweets? It's like, but he analyzed 100 million tweets. And, this is a guy that knows what he's doing. And the science is there. The data supports the fact that there is no Bernie bro. It's all bullshit. And I'm just so upset that our film didn't have a chance to come out before Super Tuesday and to really kind of help, add to the conversation. I mean, it's upsetting on many levels because I feel that instead of it being this film that could really have helped the movement, I think right now it's creating awareness, and that's going to help us, down the line. But at the end of the day, we're in one of the most, important elections ever in the history of our country. And, we need Trump out of office. And, adding to that, I think a lot of people were concerned about the timing of this film. And, I close friends and other people saying, well, look, is your film, the Bernie blackout, is it going to hurt Vice President Joe Biden? And I said, here's my feeling on that, is that we need to have an honest conversation. We need to be honest about how Joe Biden is, where he's at. Is he the most electable person right now? And, in just my opinion, has nothing to do with the film. It's like, I feel like all this stuff is going to be examined. And I think he got a free ride. I think that, Senator Sanders didn't drill down important elements of his record. Now, that stuff is going to be hit hard. It's going to be hit extremely hard in the general election. And, Trump was able to get elected with hardly raising any money and a fractured GOP. I mean, you looked at up until like the week before, they were maneuvering to dump him, and have, Pence run and Condoleezza Rice be the VP. Up until the last week, they're trying to get rid of him. He had no money. He had no organization, and he still won. So you can't tell me for 1 minute the billions of dollars that he's already raised, plus the free media that he knows how to harness and use, that we're not going to get all the stuff that wasn't talked about, the Social Security, the misrepresentations of truth to some degree with, Vice President Biden. All that stuff is going to be hit so hard. And it upsets me that, we go into South Carolina and the media gives him a free pass. I mean, come on. I mean, we're fooling ourselves if we think it's not, they're not going to spend $1 billion on, the allegations, sexual, the rape allegations, but I mean, $1 billion just in Michigan and Wisconsin alone. Come on, that's going to happen. I'm
Absolutely.
not making it. I think that'll happen.
Oh, absolutely. Like there's literally nothing we could say or you could put in your documentary that's going to be worse than what Joe Biden himself says and does. Literally nothing. He's his own worst enemy. Oh yes, guys, Ed Schultz. Thank you so much. I couldn't think of that. So one of the things that your film points out is that 90% of the media is owned by 5 companies. And correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that partly due to Bill Clinton?
I'm not an expert in that. I mean, maybe is that
I
is that the
believe
deal?
it was his law that he passed during his presidency.
Well, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, not really. Sounds about right.
I mean, it was one of those things when we were doing the research. I was completely shocked that it was that much control. I didn't know exactly the root of it, but I mean, the consolidation is it's mind-boggling, and it's dangerous. To have that much power and influence controlled by so few people is it's not where our democracy needs to be going.
Absolutely. One of the things, to get back to your Bernie Bros thing, the gentleman said a term I haven't heard, which is just kind of the epitome of what it is: frequency illusion. So essentially, the media just keeps saying Bernie Bro, Bernie Bro, blatantly ignores our literally thousands of screenshots of us telling, people telling us to, kill ourselves and just awful things. But they keep, saying these things over and over. And I think that gentleman did a great job.
Hold on 1 second. Sorry, my daughter's here. Real quick. Give me like 2 seconds, okay? Thanks. I'll be right back. Sorry.
It happens. It's okay.
She's awesome. I got a 3.5-year-old who's much smarter than all of us combined. What was the last part of that? I'm sorry.
So the one thing I liked about the way you touched on Bernie Bros was it wasn't just a defense of us. It was actually stating, scientifically, look, this is controlled opposition. This is saying it's picking and creating a narrative. So I think you did a really good job with that. And I really like the gentleman that you interviewed for it. I think he did a really good job.
Thank you. I just want to say, we had such a good team. I'm one of, a group of really good storytellers, and I get to come on your show and talk about it. But the Jeff Winchell study is just so important because it gives us the important data. And then you look at the conversation. Thank you, darling. If you look at the conversation with Jeff Cohen, who was trusted enough to come on and share his story. His story, working with Phil Donahue and, the show being canceled as a result of, wanting to book progressive views and anti-war, people. I mean, those are important stories. And I think that it shows a direct firsthand account on how much power, some people have in directing and creating the narrative. And I think that, it's important to point out that these companies, they don't have our best interest. They don't. It's people like you and, Lauren Steiner, who's got a show called The Robust Opposition. And, there's all these great little shows that are really reaching people. And so, I mean, I can't applaud you enough. And we're in the same boat. It's like we go out and we try to make this film, and there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee it's ever going to be seen or finished or made. It could be a losing proposition. We went out and did this on my own dime in terms of going out and actually shooting this, and then to have the, win the confidence from Vice and, Morgan Hertzman over there and Tara. It takes them. What's that, darling? Yeah. Give me a little couple seconds here, Francis. I'm on this thing here.
Her name is Frances.
It's Francis Delphine.
Oh my God, that's
Hold on, let me
precious.
try to get. This is Joy. Want to say hi, Joy? But yeah, I mean, for Vice to have the confidence to put something on this is brave in its own world. I mean, they are owned by A&E Networks, which is owned by Walt Disney. One of the biggest things is I couldn't believe that we were lucky to land that platform, because we can do a documentary and we can push it out, and it's only as powerful as many people can see it. And that's why when Pat the Burner reached out to me and said, "Hey, do you want to be on Joy's show?" I'm like, "Of course." It's we get to talk about something that I think is important, and that's resonating with a lot of people. And anytime you get a chance to talk about this, it's important. So thank you.
Absolutely. Do you feel like, even if it wasn't seen by a lot of people, do you feel that at the very least it was therapeutic for you?
I think it was. We finished the first rough cut. I mean, we only had a couple. It was such a short period of time from the time we ended filming to actually delivering this, and it was absolutely the first time we had it assembled, and we were all working remotely, the editors, the producers, and myself. And once it was all put together, I started bawling. I mean, as a storyteller and filmmaker, I'm so close to the project, but at the same time, I'm also a supporter. And so I had a chance to sit there after all that's going on, working remotely. The whole city shut down, and we're in our own little spots doing the best we can to get this done. And I just bawled. I mean, it's when you have so much hope and then it's erased like that overnight. And all that hope was built over years, not like a week, not 2 months. There are people like yourself and all these supporters that were working, for years. And then just to see, like, overnight, it's gone. And, so the first 5 or 6 minutes of the film, when I was watching the first rough cut, which we're all working on, I lost it. And I just sat there in my garage where I am right now, in my little workspace. And it's sad. And can it be a part of the healing process? Perhaps. But I think, I've never been good at the Twitter or the social media thing. But so when I started the Twitter thing, and then, all these people said something similar, that it really is.
Dad, about how is the cinnamon drink? Do you want to try some?
Okay, let's try some cinnamon drink.
Yeah, I try some.
But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, I was talking to Adam, who's one of the co-EPs. He's directed with me on a couple things, and he was reading in a lot of the tweets, and he said the same thing. He said, yeah, a lot of people have been really affected and affected, and hopefully it's part of the healing process. But I don't know what the stages of loss is, but I've heard someone kind of compare it to that. And
yeah,
there's
they're on a red picture.
Definitely.
Hi. There you
go. Hi.
So I mean, it's been, is it cathartic? Is it, I don't know. I mean, the whole thing is absolutely frustrating. I still, then we watched it the night it premiered again, and I just sat there, and it's a range of emotions. And I hope people have a chance to watch it and have a moment to kind of just look at all these brave people that dropped everything to go and work their butt off, and to somehow take this as a moment of healing, but then just as a moment to say, look, you know what, we got a lot of work that's unfinished, and we got to get back out there. So, we can have our moment, and we can cry, and we can be sad, and then we got to go kick some butt.
Yeah, I mean, I had my breakdown. I made a very brief post that I sent you, but I mean, I left Pennsylvania, I left my home, I left my family to volunteer in Iowa for 5 weeks. And you showed some of the rallies I was at volunteering, and I freaking lost it. And the part that really just ripped my heart out was when you were interviewing people the night we were waiting for the results to come in. I don't think I've ever cried that much in my entire life than when we were waiting. I was at a caucus, I helped, and we just sat at the bar waiting and waiting and waiting. And you said it correctly, by midnight, there was only 2% of the vote in. We were cheated of our victory party. I am so thankful for my Bernie brothers and sisters who, we just literally sat there like hugging each other like all night. It was very traumatic because when you knock on hundreds of doors in ice and snow and -4 degrees, and it all culminates to this one day, and then when is it solidified? Who knows? Did you win? Who knows? So that was a really important part to have in there, and you did your job as far as making it effective because it was hard.
Yeah,
But it should be.
It's interesting. I mean, it's like, and those are real. Thank you for all that. That's really sweet and thoughtful. I think we had a 2-hour broadcast, which is 88 minutes for TV, and it's so hard because literally that whole night in Iowa, those days that we were there, that could be a feature. And honestly, at that point when we were there, when we went out to do the first one, I said, look, you know what, we can just do the Iowa caucus, and I can turn this into an amazing feature, because the first, you don't know what's going to happen. And that night, there's so much more to add to that. And we just kept cutting and cutting and cutting because we only can put in 88 minutes. And just the tears, the frustration, the kind of unknowing, all these people are just, like yourself, it's like you dropped everything, you came, you volunteered, you did what you needed to do. And then did they or did they not? They robbed us. They robbed us of that moment. And the whole night just building up and just waiting and waiting and waiting. And I just remember Greg Taylor, my awesome DP that I was on the road with, he knows how passionate I am about Senator Sanders and this movement. And he said so many times, he said, I could just see your face and the range of emotions that I was going through. And I'm just like you, and but yeah, I mean, it was something else. And I still confused on really, really what happened, other than you saw Pete make a very, very ballsy and smart political decision. And I think if it was on the others, if it was Bernie doing that, mainstream media, corporate media would have just buried him on that. They would have said, how dare you? And so he was in a no-win situation. And so I don't think the campaign did anything wrong there. And I think he would have got buried if he would have came out and said, look, we're going to win this. And, so I think, while that's just guesswork, I mean, I think it's my gut. Can you go see Uncle Troy? Hold on one second. I'm almost done here. Give me a few seconds.
I agree with you on that. Absolutely. I don't think there's anything he could have done differently. It was so infuriating and upsetting to those of us like who just come from caucus. Like, why the hell is Pete? Like, it was just gross. I digress a bit, but is there anything you didn't put in the documentary that you wish you would have?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot that you could there's so much you could put in there. I mean, if you look at really kind of setting up what happened in 2016, that unto itself deserves more than a couple lines in the voiceover. So examining, properly digging in and examining what happened in 2016, how do you fit in the 88 minutes? There's that. I think also another big aspect was the whole, there's so many examples. One of the things was it the PBS, the PBS special.
Oh, yes. Yes.
When that happened, I was like, are you kidding me? It's like they just completely, it was ridiculous. There's
John
that.
Delaney got coverage. John Delaney.
Exactly. I don't get it.
Crazy.
There's that. There's the whole thing with Senator Elizabeth Warren, and we didn't even get into that. And that was it was.
That's what stood out to me. That's why I asked you the question, because I kept waiting for that diss of a handshake, and that you said women can't be president, because that really hurt our campaign, even though we all knew it was utter crap. So that was the only thing that stood out to me as far as what wasn't in.
It's interesting because I think it hurt, but I think it's a perfect example, and it's unfortunate it didn't make it into the film, but it's a perfect example of how the media was trying to seize an opportunity to paint Senator Sanders in a bad light. Now, was that really worthy of a week of just nonstop, coverage? No, that wasn't. It's a he said, she said on a personal conversation that can be misinterpreted a million different ways, if it was even misinterpreted. So, I think, I think what was interesting to me is that I don't think the media tried really hard to ram that down our throats, but it didn't work. And I remember really looking at the polls those weeks, and people did not buy into it. And I think it was another nail in Senator Warren's coffin. And it's like I think who knows what really happened. But I can tell you, it just seemed from some point, it seemed desperate. And it seemed like a desperate measure to take. And watching the mainstream media, the corporate media, and the cable news just be complicit in pushing that down our throats. Come on. So I think to some degree it's like, I was kind of relieved that a lot of the voters didn't really buy into it. Maybe they did. I don't know.
No, I totally agree. Our polls actually seem to go up a little because I think a lot of Warren people actually realized that she was so completely full of it. You actually, you stated on my post, which I didn't know about, that you are doing a sequel, Bernie Come Back. Or is that a joke?
Well, it's never a joke to me.
Oh, okay.
No, it's like,
I would love to do it. Awesome.
I have a couple ideas, and one idea is, I literally reached out and to whoever would listen to me, which who knows if anyone's listening. I'm like, why don't we just do the sequel? Everybody loves the sequel. We'll do the Bernie Comeback. We already did the Bernie Blackout. Let's do the Bernie Comeback. And what we'll do is we'll do a feature doc, and we'll explain in detail why all of Bernie's policies and platform is more important now than ever. The emergency implementation of so many of these programs is happening right now. And, why not do a film about that? And then at the very end, we get that out to the masses, since he's, we get this on a network. And at the very end, Senator Sanders just pops in and just announces that he's unsuspending his campaign. And it's as simple as that. So we spent an hour or two talking about why all these policies are perfect right now. And, everybody wants their money back with the vote they had because of the circumstance we're in now, because it's now clearer than ever. And then we just have Senator Sanders pop in and just say we're unsuspending, and here we go. So, you know,
That would
Senator
be kind
Sanders,
of
if you hear that,
utopia,
I'm ready to go.
well, sign me up. I'll be in it for sure. I would love
Right.
that.
But on another note, we're discussing doing another documentary right now that I think would be very important, called Afterburn. And Afterburn, I mean, we had the opportunity to talk to hundreds of people on the road that never saw Bernie blackout. Those are people that we captured in the field talking about why they support Bernie, why they're part of this movement. And I think it would be really interesting to go back and talk to those people and say, what now? What's your thought now? Are you going to support Vice President Biden? Are you going to support Trump? Are you going to stay home? Are you going to vote third party? Because I think I keep hearing the headline, 12% of Bernie Sanders supporters are, and all this. And it's just kind of like wrapped into this headline or a bullet point. And, these are real people. And the one thing about the people like us and like all the people that are watching, one of the things that attracted us to Senator Sanders is that he was independent. He was a free thinker. He was not told what to do or how to do it. He was completely independent. And I think it's important for the people that are writing these stories to understand that just as he is an independent thinker, so are the people that support him. And for people to say, oh, you got to do this, you got to do that. You say, well, you know what? We're actually all individuals, and we all have our own way of thinking. And so, slow your roll and let's just all take a deep breath, because you're going to vote who and when and how you want to vote on your own terms. And nobody's going to tell Joy who to vote for, and nobody's going to tell me who to vote for. I'm going to do that. And I want to go back in Afterburn and meet all these people that probably never made it into Bernie blackout and find out what their thinking is, because I think that's an important conversation. And I think it's best to hear about the people instead of just kind of writing up a headline and just putting them all together.
Absolutely. I think that'd be awesome. I did a three-way debate of Bernie delegates after I was at the protest for 6 days on the outside, but I wanted to have a debate with them about where they are now. How did watching that corruption, do they still want to be a delegate again? Things like that. So yeah, I think listening to the people, I think that's an awesome, idea for a documentary. We all connect with each other so much. It's so incredibly beautiful. And I'll be doing some filming if the DNC still has their primary. I am flying out to Milwaukee. I will be there filming. So fingers crossed. As of now, it's still on. So, but what is something you want to leave with our viewers so that they, something for them to take away, and also, something to entice them to watch the documentary if they haven't yet?
I think, one reason to watch the documentary is I think it's an important discussion, an honest discussion of what's going on with corporate media. I got this, when you're doing these documentaries, you don't know who's watching, you hope you get viewers. And we got this email today, and it was from BJ Bullard, and she is from Antioch University, and she teaches a class on journalism and media. And it was the sweetest email, because she went on to say that she's going to require this required watching for her class when it starts up.
Wow.
And she wrote me, she said, Bernie Blackout is a must-see film for all students of media, journalism, and political science. And I think when you get a response from someone in the academic world, she's also a documentary filmmaker, but she teaches media and journalism and when you get a response like that, that means a lot, because this isn't some conspiracy bullshit. These are facts, these are numbers, and it's a movement that got shoved to the side, in my opinion, by forces much greater. But at the end of the day, it's just, I hope people watch the film, because I think it really is a good example of there being too much power, too much influence in corporate media. And I hope that this is a trigger, or it starts to help us understand that cable news is not news. It's a political talk show with an agenda. And the one thing people can take away from this is that at the end of the day, I mean, we're better than them. And the good guy, we may lose some battles, but we always end up on top, so it's going to be a long, hard, fight. But I think, we have so many really good people. And I just think about, being out there and just listening to these people. I mean, half the time I'm sitting there doing an interview, and you just ask them a question. Is it really like, and you just listen to the passion and the energy. I don't know how many times I cried or got goosebumps or got frustrated, because these are real people with real lives, giving up everything, to go out and try to get our, our agenda, passed.
Absolutely. And
It's going to be
our supporters have depth, and they have hearts. We really do fight for someone we don't know. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a diverse crowd too. I mean, that's what I hated about the media. It was just always, oh, it's these college students, and it was just all bullshit. And like, if anybody had a chance to go to a rally, I wonder what the conversion rate is. Is there a conversion rate? I mean, if you go to a Bernie Sanders rally, what's the chances of you going away saying, I don't know about that guy,
Like
I mean,
zero.
it's just hard, because you're
Especially
just
if Miss
around,
Nina is there too. Like,
you're just around people that care so much about something. I bring my daughter, we went to this rally. We weren't shooting yet, but we went to the rally in East Los Angeles. And you're running in, and everybody's slapping high fives. She's slapping high fives, handing out signs. And, it's just powerful. And I can't wait. I know there's so many good people in this movement. I can't wait to see, Senator Nina Turner. I mean, my God. And I can listen to the same speech, any one of her speeches, anything. I get goosebumps. I get fired up. I want to move. I want to act. I want change. I hope we continue to see more and more of her. And, if she ever wants to, do a powerful documentary, just please hit me up, because I would love to tell your story, because she is a force of nature,
Heck yeah. I told her I'm a heathen, but she takes my ass to church. I'm not messing around. Like, she is just, I have yelled at, I mean, I've met her like 10 times, but I always say, burn and turn, you're our VP. And I always scream it at her. And at first she was like, oh, okay. And then it went to thank you. I was like, oh, she's open to it. So since that's not happening, 2024, Miss Nina, 100%. One thing I just thought of that I forgot to ask you: has Bern or Jane or anyone reached out and said they've watched it?
No, I haven't heard anything from Senator Sanders or Dr. Jane Sanders. I haven't heard from either one of them. I've heard from some of the people that were featured in it. I heard from Crystal Ball, and I've heard from David Sirota and Megan Day. I've heard a lot from them, and the response has been very, very supportive and very good. And I think I look at this process is so, it's such a collective, effort to get something like this done. And, we had Matt in DC and Terry and Adam and Chris Lockett and this amazing team that really came together to, knock this out. And it's really kind of, it's also a tribute to all the journalists that got on the Skype. I couldn't believe that Vice was going to allow us to use interviews from Skype, and they were brave enough to do that. And, getting people like Jeff Cohen and Jimmy Dore and, Crystal Ball and, Lauren Steiner, everyone from, to all come and share their thoughts. It's really told from their perspective, their point of view. They're the experts in this. And, for me, just as a political enthusiast, and supporter, it in a lot of ways, it was, getting to hear these great stories from them, and their insight was, I'm forever grateful,
That's awesome.
And I can't wait to see what's next. What do you think's going to happen, Joy?
Well,
What's next?
I have what I want to happen and what I think will happen.
All right, what's going to happen?
You had Mike Figueredo in your documentary from Humanist Report. The most recent time I was on his show was last week, and we had a whole thing about what's going to happen. And what I think is going to happen is I think we're going to go to convention. Biden's going to be replaced. And I think that we are screwed. Like, honestly, I think that it is so up to us. Like, it really is. It's up to us. Electoral politics has not been going in our favor. And I feel like, and this isn't to be like morose or anything, but I feel like if Bernie wasn't able to do this, I don't know that anyone else can, because he's the one who planted the seed, and he's the one. There's never going to be a man more supported or more loved or more inspiring. So it really is not me, us at this point. Like, we really have to go balls to the wall and just keep fighting for each other.
I think that's it's a really good point, and I wouldn't be surprised at some point the DNC is going to decide that Vice President Biden is not their man anymore, and the powers that be will have him step down for some reason, and they'll pick the replacement. I mean, there's, the convention rules, it's very clear they can change the rules now,
Which is why, please let it still happen, because I need to be there with my megaphone again. I need to. It's therapeutic.
So do you get to go into the convention, or?
I applied for a press pass, but some of them know who I am, so that's not going to happen.
Right.
It's just not. There's no way in hell.
I don't think I'm going to be getting a press pass.
Yeah, I have too bad of a reputation as being like loud and a free speaker. So yeah, that ain't gonna happen. But regardless, at this point it's still going on. Fingers crossed, because I just really want to go and make our voices heard, because it's the only thing that like got me through it in 2016 was actually being able to protest that convention, because it's hard, and now this is our last chance for Bernie. So, and there's a bit of a PTSD there as well from 2016. So it's like, I just feel like I need to do this. So fingers crossed it'll still happen.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to spend some time and energy on getting Mitch McConnell the F out. I think that might be a little summer project. I think, let's get him the hell out of office.
Yeah, absolutely. And Pelosi and W. Wasserman Schultz.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like I would put most of my effort in getting Mitch McConnell out of office, and if we got him done, I mean, oh God, it would feel good. Just have him go away.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think that'd be a little side project.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you so
absolutely.
much.
Thank you so much for coming on. This was a great discussion, and I truly enjoyed your documentary, and I recommend everyone watches it for sure.
Thanks.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, I have some great shows coming up. Luke Savage is coming back Friday. And for those who don't know, myself and Pat the Burner slash Nate's Liver are writing a parody book, and it pre-orders come out next month. It's a parody on the resistance, and we're having an awesome time writing it. So yeah, look forward to that as well. So again, thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you so much, Pat, for joining me tonight.
Thank you. It's been an awesome conversation. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Take care.
Take care.